Immigrations and Customs Enforcement has been working tirelessly, literally, trying to enforce our nation's immigration laws, rounding up criminals, illegal criminals, immigrants. But their work is not come without fierce and, in fact, in some sad instances, even violent resistance from the woke mob. And you can take, for just an example, the immigration raid at a marijuana farm in Southern California just yesterday, where for 4 hours there were protesters, and apparently one of them at least opened fire on federal agents. And thankfully in that incident, none of the agents were injured, but unfortunately that was far from being an isolated incident. Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Congressman Brad Knott. He's a member of the House Homeland Security Committee and represents North Carolina's 13th Congressional District. Congressman Knott, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to have you.
Hey, Jody, it's good to be here. Thank you.
All right, so we've got several of these immigration enforcement raids that are seemingly being met with fierce resistance from the woke mob. And so let me start with this question. Do Democrats, in your opinion, even some like California Governor Gavin Newsom, do they bear some responsibility for stoking the fire of the violence that we're seeing right now against these federal agents?
Absolutely. And I would push back on that. It's not just the woke mob. It's the entire Democratic Party, by and large, who are pushing back against the efforts of this administration to do two things. And those two things, of course, are to secure the border and then to remove illegal immigrants, starting with those who are most dangerous. And even in Congress, it is very common to hear people call our ICE agents the Gestapo, or compare them to Hitler's secret police, the SS. It's unbelievable. And it's unfortunately a continuing trend that I saw before I decided to run. When I was working in the Department of Justice, when I was seeing the resistance from the Biden-Harris administration to enforce our laws, they do not want any immigration enforcement. They are committed to the open borders, and the very, very dangerous effects to our own country, those are not being considered or even recognized. And they are playing with real fire here, enraging the left, enraging the illegal immigrant community against law enforcement like they're doing, and it should stop.
Yeah, great point. In fact, I had that discussion with someone earlier in the week, and we both agreed, yeah, this is beyond just the woke mob out there. It really does seem to entail virtually, if not all, of the Democratic Party. I wonder if the SPLC now is going to come out and label the Democratic Party a terrorist organization or some sort of hate group. We'll probably not hold our breath for that to happen, but an interesting question anyways. So let me, what is your reaction, your response to Governor Newsom? He's calling these immigration raids inhumane. How do you respond to that type of terminology?
You know, Governor Newsom is the quintessential finger in the wind, whatever he needs to do to maintain relevance and to secure political power. That's all he's doing. And he knows deep down that the open border has been a catastrophe for California. You know, in some estimates, almost 30% of healthcare costs in California are because of freeloading illegal immigrants. I mean, your listeners need to answer this question. In the country, there are probably 25 to 30 million illegal aliens. Where do they get their health care? Where do they get their health care? It's either in states like California on the government dole, or they go to the emergency room, and those costs are handed off to Americans. You know, Governor Newsom should know better. I was in California not too long ago, and their state has been overrun by an illegal immigration swell that has really, it's almost divided the state into two separate Californias. And it's absolutely unacceptable. And so he knows better, I hope. And he is just trying to score cheap political points at the expense of his own state.
Yeah, very interesting perspective there. You know, when you look at all the violence that is intertwined in all of this, it certainly is not unique simply to California. I mean, this week we had 11 people arrested for attempted murder charges on an attempted ambush near Dallas. In fact, one officer there was shot in the neck. Are we watching, Congressman, I don't know, some sort of version of defund the police 2.0. Is it that type of thing, do you think, that we're witnessing with all of this?
Well, I think we have to come to grips with the fact that the Democratic Party, a greater percentage of that party is the radical left. And the radical left truly hates the structures that have enabled Western civilization to flourish. One of those is, of course, law and order. And whether it's the border, whether it is coming down on violence, on vandalism, on assaulting our police, whatever it may be, it really enrages the extreme elements of the Democratic Party. And it's a tremendous problem. But you look at the Democratic Party, look at their mayor, the candidate for mayor in New York City. He is an unapologetic anti-Semitic communist. He has championed the phrase globalize the intifada. This is where the Democratic Party is now. And any type of traditional conservatism or American jurisprudence, American law enforcement, they really do get inflamed. And it's a huge problem. But let me just put this one note in there. The violence that I'm most concerned about is not the crazy college kids who live in their parents' basement. It is the violence that will come to our streets if we have open borders. Around the world, there are some of the most heinous people who are plotting to come, if they're not here already, into the United States. And they lay dormant for a while. But you import the third world, you import people who want to cut people's heads off or shoot their rivals. That violence will show up in the American streets before too long. We've already seen the effects, whether it's with drugs or human trafficking, but it is only going to grow worse if we don't get ahead of this problem. So I commend the president.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hope we can keep that effort. Yeah.
Yeah, great point. And I hope you heard it coming into this, but we were talking about DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin actually has said that they've captured almost 600 known or suspected terrorists who have been arrested, and some 2,700 members of the gang Tren de Aragua. You would think people would be happy that these type of people, individuals, are being caught, apprehended. Tell me real quickly, you've got a couple of bills that I want you to explain dealing with these type of things, and both of them have passed out of their respective committees. Briefly, give us a highlight of what these bills are.
The first bill, I think, is the most important piece of legislation for illegal immigration in this Congress. And it's built on my experience as a federal prosecutor, and it essentially categorizes anyone who is here illegally in a separate slate if they commit a crime. If they're convicted of a crime, they are subject to enhanced penalties. And then secondly, if they return to the country a second time illegally, they will be subjected to harsher penalties. And there are two goals here. One is to protect the American citizens from people who are here illegally that want to commit crimes. But second, it's to deter those from coming back a second time after deportation. I prosecuted people who returned more than a dozen times illegally because they don't fear the American legal system. We must recognize this threat, address this threat, and hope to deter it into the future. The second bill I introduced, it basically tasks a study and then an action plan on how to deal with Tren de Aragua. They're in about 15 different countries in the Western Hemisphere. They're very proficient at embedding themselves in society, laying dormant, and then metastasizing with violence, with drug trafficking, with human trafficking. And again, the Department of Homeland Security needs to study it and then put an action plan together on how to remove this blight once and for all. So those are my two bills that we've gotten out of committee, and the House will be voting on them soon, I hope.
Outstanding. Those are two excellent bills. Congressman Brad Knott, we want to keep a track on that. We'd love to have you come back on and keep us posted on
Anytime.
how those are developing and how they're moving forward. You know, and it comes at such a time, I'm sure you saw that data recently analyzed by the Center for Immigration Studies found that sanctuary states released some 25,000 criminal illegals back into our population between October and February. Just unbelievable. Yep. And then you have also what seems to be the left is okay with some 300,000 missing children that have come across the border, and very few of them have been found. So this is just an unprecedented time that we're living in, and I want to thank you for the incredible work that you're doing there on Capitol Hill. We've got just 20 seconds. Your final thoughts before we take off.
Thank you for having me. And I'll just remind everybody, we have a precious country that we must steward. And if we don't take immigration seriously, if we're not carefully vetting people to come in, we're going to pay the price. And we've got to do that. Protect legal immigrants and deter illegal. And that's my final word.
Brad Knott, North Carolina, thank you so much for joining us.